Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Dear viewers, we are pleased to bring you a new episode of your program, The Rope That Binds Us, ahlusunnah waljama'aah. Last episode, we discussed the position of those who oppose the sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And we said that we can categorize those people to three groups. The first one, or the first groups who oppose, or those who don't believe in the authority of the sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam in general. And I said that this idea started in the almost in the time of the second generation in Islam, in the time of the tabi'een, and it was rejected and refuted very strongly by the older among the Sahaba, and also the scholars of tabi'een, rahimahullah ta'ala. Ayyub al-Sukhtiyani, for instance, rahimahullah, said, if you narrate to a person from the sunnah and he says, leave this aside and narrate from the Quran, then know that he is an innovator. This idea never been taken as a base or foundation for any sect in the history of Islam. Until the 13th century, a group of, we call them thinkers, or group of people adopted this idea and started spreading it in Iraq, in Egypt, but it was formulated in India in the 13th century as a group. They call themselves Al-Qur'aniyun, those who follow Al-Qur'an. They claim that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He said in His book that He have sent down the book, and in that book He explained everything. He mentioned all matters. They thought that means that there is no need for the sunnah because everything in the Qur'an. And I remember we said that some of these verses that they use either related to the safe tablets, Al-Lawh al-Mahfuz, which exist in the top of the heavens, next to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's throne, which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wrote in it. Everything will happen in this world. So this book the book was mentioned in these verses are not related to the book which is Al-Quran. And also we said that no doubt Al-Quran has all guidelines, generally speaking, but it not necessarily means that every detail were mentioned in the Quran. As we know, Al-Quran will not include all type and different kind of science and different type of knowledge. There is no, it's not a book of history or medicine or geography or economy. It is a guidance for humans. So if they said, no, we talk about only religion, we said, even in the religion, not every detail were mentioned in the Quran. But generally speaking, yes, Al-Quran cover all areas, but not in details. That's why Allah sent messengers. That's why Allah have sent the messenger to the believers to explain to them that the book He revealed to them. Also, one of their famous argument that they said, Allah promised only to save His book. Then they use and quote the verse from Surah 15 verse 9, إِنَّا نَحْنُ نَزَّلْنَا الذِّكْرَ وَإِنَّا لَهُ لَحَافِظُونَ. We have without doubt sent down the dhikr. And they said dhikr means the Quran or the book, the Quran. And we will surely guard it and or save it or secure it. But dhikr here, to translate it to Al-Quran only, this is not the way the early Muslim generation translate. This is not the only way. This is not the way the early Muslim generation understood the meaning of the word dhikr. Dhikr here in this verse means Al-Quran and As-Sunnah, the message. We have sent down the message. We have sent down the religion. We have sent down to you the message which will guide you. And we are going to protect this religion. That's what this verse means. It's not only related to Al-Quran, but it is more general than that, as Ibn Mas'ud and others have said. That's why there is no point, as Ibn Hazm said, from saving words in Quran without saving the meaning of it, how to be understood, how to be understood. Also, their third argument, they use a hadith where the Prophet ﷺ, they claim that the Prophet ﷺ said, my hadith will become widespread. So whatever is according to the Quran, then it is from me. And whatever contradicts it, it is not from me. So they said that means the Quran is the ultimate source of the religion, the only source of the religion. There is no need for the Sunnah because everything has to go to the Quran. First of all, this hadith is fabricated. As the scholars of hadith and the scholars of Islam said, Al-Shafi'i, Ibn Mahdi, Ibn Abdul Barr, Al-Saghani, Ibn Hazm, Al-Shawkani, Shaykh Islam bin Taymiyyah, and so many have mentioned this hadith and they judge it as fabricated hadith, unacceptable hadith. So how can you base a belief or an argument based on a fabricated statement, a fabricated hadith? Also, this hadith contradicts itself because in the Quran, Allah ordering us 33 times to accept what whatever the Prophet ﷺ said or whatever the Prophet ﷺ teach. Anyway, the argument will not stop here. There is another group of people also adopted this idea and start spreading it in a different way to raise doubt about the authenticity of the Sunnah and raise doubt about that Muslims should go and refer to the Sunnah in all matters, and they should not go to the Sunnah and instead only go to the Quran and take their religion and their rules from the Quran. Those people, what some of the Orientalists who are like non-Muslims and they are Western mainly researchers who has studied Islam and Islamic science and wrote so many books about Islam and Islamic science. They raised some doubts about the authority of Sunnah. And they wrote several articles. And these articles read by some Muslim thinkers. And they wrote also their own articles and their books to raise more doubt about Sunnah. We know in any researcher or any student of knowledge who studied the history of this claim, he will be familiar with so many names came in different places in the world who wrote articles to raise doubts about the Sunnah. Without going into the names of those thinkers or those people who raised the doubts about the authority of Sunnah, let's take some of their argument and examine them. One, they said, many hadith are the result of a political and social evolution and not necessarily from Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I remember once I was in Chicago attending to a conference. Some Orientalists were talking about the history of Sunnah and so far. And one of them actually said the same thing. He said that the hadith was made up by some Sahaba or Tabi'een or some scholars just to serve a political reason or because of social reason. So if people are rich, he will make up a hadith encouraging people to donate to the poor. If people are poor, that's a social reason. He will make up some hadith to make those people feel good that there is a Jannah and that's what the reward they will get. And he has no shame when he's saying that. And he said for political reason, they mentioned some ahadith about the Khilafah and about who's the Khalifa and so on. Anyway, first of all, we have to remember something. That we agree that there is some ahadith were fabricated and weak are not accepted in Islam. We don't claim that every single narration is accepted. We think there is some are weak, there is some are fabricated, there is some we don't accept. So we're not saying that everything must be accepted. No, we said hadith must be examined by certain rules which has been set by the scholar of hadith. That's one to keep in mind. Two, give me an example of one of the trustworthy Muslim scholars in hadith who fabricated any hadith because of a political or because of a social reason. The only example that they have, or the famous example that they have, they said Al-Imam al-Zuhri, Muhammad ibn Shihab al-Zuhri. As Al-Iraqi said, وَأَوَّلُ جَامِعٍ لِلْأَثَرِ ibn Shihab آمِرًا لَهُ عُمَر. The first one who collect the hadith is Ibn Shihab, when Umar ibn Abdul Aziz ordered him to collect the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. They said, and listen carefully to what they said, they quote Ibn Shihab, they said that Ibn Shihab said, those princes, it means Umayyad princes, forced me to write narrations. So they said that means that he was forced by the Umayyads to make up some ahadith, and to add to the Prophet ﷺ sunnah a hadith which is not from it. And you, the people of sunnah, take from Ibn Shihab. We said stop. First of all, one of the common way among the Muslims in that time, that they don't write the ahadith. They make people memorize the ahadith and not to write it. So writing it was not so common in the time of Ibn Shihab al-Zuhri, rahimahullah ta'ala, because the only thing need to be written in that time was the Quran, and that's the way of Abu Bakr and Umar radiallahu anh, and the early generation, in the early time in the Sahaba radiallahu anhum times. Anyway, so Ibn Shihab, when he started writing the ahadith, it was something new. And he said, I was forced to do that because the Khalifa ordered him to collect the hadith, because people start dying and they're losing this sharp memory that they used to have in the time of the Sahaba. But we find that the statement of Ibn Shihab is quite different. He said, those princes forced me to write the narrations. See the difference. The narrations. But when you take out the and it became narrations, it sounds like he make up some narrations. But no, it is the narrations. The narrations. It means they asked me or they forced me to write it. And that because Ibn Shihab was in debt, and they helped him financially, and in return they asked him to collect the hadith. And Ibn Shihab is not the only narrator we have in the history of Islam. We have so many other great scholars in the history of Islam who narrated the ahadith and wrote the ahadith. Also, they said that some companions fabricated ahadith, or some scholars, and they cannot come up with a single example. They cannot come with a single example to support this claim. That's why this claim is not acceptable, and it's refuted by the Muslim scholars. And I will leave you with this point, and inshallah I will see you in the next episode to continue our discussion about another group or another idea came up in the history of Islam opposing the authority of Sunnah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect us from such ideas and to help us to follow the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Thank you for listening to me. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.